If you've ever seen my Pillow Give rebuttal, you know that the Jehovah's Witness religion loves to control the sex life of their members. Not only have they banned all sex outside marriage, but there was a time where even certain acts within marriage were forbidden. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to cover the extensive history about one of Watchtower's most obscure and ridiculous prohibitions, which most Jehovah's Witnesses are not even aware of. Thou shalt not take it in the mouth or in the back door, if you know what I mean. Sorry, I couldn't think of something proper. There's no serious way to talk about this, guys. You probably already cringed by now, so smash that like button and subscribe so you can have access to more of these fun topics.
Satan's world delights in practices that can make us unclean and unfit in Jehovah's eyes, even in seemingly small ways.
Before 1974, Watchtower didn't involve itself in the private matters of a married couple, because why would you, right? It's their business. But in 1974, Watchtower released this doozy in its November 15 issue, in which they classify oral and anal acts as porneia or fornication, even within marriage. If both marriage partners consent to engage in mouth or butt stuff, then they both committed porneia and will be judged by the elders. Watchtower 1976 says, unnatural practices in connection with sex in marriage, such as oral and anal copulation, have caused some of God's people to become impure in his eyes. But the Watchtower kept above this morass of filth by alerting married couples to God's thinking on the matter. Yep, you heard that right. The sovereign of the universe really cares how you use your tongue, so much that he's down to kick you out of his congregation if you go beyond missionary. So it's clear, from 1974 to 1978, the Watchtower prohibited any form of anal or oral sex. It was seen as a perversion of nature and could cause a married couple to be disfellowshipped. Now you might be wondering, Panda, why would any married couple confess to such intimate things to a bunch of old men in the congregation? Well, dear viewer, if you're an indoctrinated Jehovah's Witness, you probably feel a lot of guilt by disobeying the Watchtower, and that will compel you to come forth to the elders and confess. I really can't state this enough. The level of shame and guilt that this religion presses upon you is astronomical. However, in 1978, Watchtower reversed their position and now ruled that elders should not get involved in the marital affair of others. Let's read. Watchtower 1978. Beyond these basic guidelines, the scriptures do not go, and hence, we cannot do more than counsel in harmony with what the Bible does say. In the past, some comments have appeared in this magazine in connection with certain unusual sex practices, such as oral sex, within marriage, and these were equated with gross sexual immorality. On this basis, the conclusion was reached that those engaging in such sex practices were subject to disfellowshipping if unrepentant. The view was taken that it was within the authority of the congregational elders to investigate and act in a judicial capacity regarding such practices in the conjugal relationship. A careful further weighing of this matter, however, convinces us that, in view of the absence of clear scriptural instruction, these are matters for which the married couple themselves must bear the responsibility before God, and that these marital intimacies do not come within the province of the congregation elders to attempt to control, nor to take disfellowshipping action with such matters as the sole basis. Of course, if any person chooses to approach an elder for counsel, he or she may do so, and the elder can consider scriptural principles with such a one, acting as a shepherd but not attempting to, in effect, police the marital life of the one inquiring. Wow, what a novel idea, right? What happens in the bedroom should stay in the bedroom, and elders have zero business in meddling with the love life of other people. Mind you, this was released only 2 years after they said that people who engage in this stuff will be dealt with through a committee. What a reversal of events. So that's interesting, right? This religious organization first banned anal and oral sex, and then a few years later reversed that position when they realized that they were overreaching and that the Bible never actually gives elders permission to get in the business of a married couple. And that was that. Everyone lived happily ever after.
Life could be a dream if I could take you up in paradise.
Like that's ever gonna happen. What a load.
No, just kidding. They reversed their position again. 5 years after the last article was released, now in 1983, the Watchtower released this juicy. What though if one mate wants or even demands to share with his or her partner in what is clearly a perverted sex practice? The above presented facts show that porneia involves unlawful sexual conduct outside the marital arrangement. Thus, a mate enforcing perverted acts, such as oral or anal sex, within the marriage, would not constitute a scriptural basis for a divorce that would free either for remarriage. Even though a believing mate is distressed by the situation, yet that one's endeavor to hold to scriptural principles will result in a blessing from Jehovah. In such cases, it may be helpful for the couple to discuss the problem frankly, bearing in mind specially that sexual relations should be honorable, wholesome, and the expression of tender love. This certainly should exclude anything that might distress or harm one's mate. As already stated, it is not for the elders to police the private marital matters of couples in the congregation. However, if it becomes known that a member of the congregation is practicing or openly advocating perverted sex relations within the marriage bond, that one certainly would not be irreprehensible, and so would not be acceptable for special privileges such as serving as an elder, a ministerial servant, or a pioneer. Such practice and advocacy could even lead to the expulsion from the congregation. So first of all, I think if your spouse is demanding you to engage in any act you do not agree with, that should be grounds for divorce, right? And if he forces you to do anything that you do not want to, that is rape and should be reported to the police immediately. Of course, Watchtower doesn't even suggest calling the police. No, they tell spouses that they should endure any abuse within their marriage because that would result in a blessing from Jehovah. Gross. And this article is interesting because they tell you that engaging in oral or anal sex within marriage is not porneia. So you're not allowed to get divorced, but it's still a potential ground for disfellowshipping. What happened here? Like, why did Watchtower do a complete 180 from saying sex is a personal decision between spouses to this? What happened in these 5 years that led them to change their minds? And soon we're going to be talking about how disastrous this policy actually was in practice. Because this Watchtower obsession over what is and isn't porneia had a tremendous impact on some rank and file Jehovah's Witnesses. Consider these examples taken from Raymond Franz's book, Crisis of Conscience, Chapter 3. So Raymond Franz used to be a governing body member back in the 70s before he stepped down, and then he was persecuted by the governing body and was disfellowshipped, and then he wrote this book, Crisis of Conscience, in which he reveals the inner workings of the governing body. It's a must read if you're interested in the Jehovah's Witness religion. I still consider him to be the greatest apostate of all time. So Raymond Franz reveals how the rule on anal and oral sex originated. It's quite interesting. Let me read it for you. I quote, "A matter not among those just mentioned, but which brought considerable discussion involved a witness couple in California. Someone had seen in their bedroom certain literature and photographs dealing with unusual sexual practices. I do not recall that we learned just how or why the witness individual reporting this happened to have access to the couple's bedroom. Yeah, seems quite shady. Investigation and interrogation by the local elders confirmed that the couple did engage in sexual relations other than simple genital copulation. Correspondence from the elders came into Brooklyn headquarters, and the governing body was called upon to rule as to what action, if any, should be taken towards the couple. Until the correspondence was read to us that morning, none of us aside from the president had had any opportunity to think about the subject. Yet within a couple of hours, the decision was reached that the couple was subject to this fellowshipping. This was thereafter set out as formal published policy, applicable to any persons engaging willfully in similar practices. Wow, so all of this mess started because some nosy witness in California, noticed some magazines in some couple's bedroom that detailed probably blowjobs and backdoor action. And then he reported that to the elders. The elders brought the couple to a judicial committee to investigate, and they confessed that they were engaging in these unlawful sex practices. And this case was brought to the headquarters, and then they banned it. Just to show you how this religion operates, the book continues. The published material was understood and applied in such a way that marriage mates generally felt obliged to report to the elders if any such practice existed or developed in their marriage, whether mutually agreed upon or done solely at the initiation of one of the mates. To fail to come forward generally is viewed as an indicative of an unrepentant attitude and as weighing in favor of disfellowshipping. The belief that disfellowshipping cuts one off from the one organization where salvation can be found, as well as from friends and relatives, exercises heavy pressure on the person to conform, no matter how difficult confession or reporting to the elders may be. The governing body's decision in 1972 resulted in a sizable number of judicial hearings as elders followed up on reports or confessions of the sexual practices involved. Women experienced painful embarrassment in such hearings as they responded to the elders' questions about the intimacies of their marital relations. Many marriages where one of the mates was not a witness underwent a turbulent period, with the non-witness mate objecting strenuously to what he or she considered an unwarranted invasion of bedroom privacy. Some marriages broke up with resulting divorce. Just imagine being pressured to confess to a judicial committee of elders of the intimate things you do in your own bedroom. It's a complete violation of privacy, and as Raymond France explained, JWs felt pressured to confess because they truly believed that confession was necessary to get right with Jehovah and attain salvation. The book continues. An unprecedented volume of mail came in over a period of 5 years, most of it questioning the scriptural basis for the governing body members inserting themselves into the private lives of others in such a way, and expressing an ability to see the validity of the arguments advanced in print to support the stand taken. Other letters, often from wives, simply expressed confusion and anguish over their uncertainty as to the properness of their sexual foreplay. One woman said she had talked to an elder and he had told her to write to the governing body for a sure answer. So she wrote, saying that she and her husband loved each other deeply, and then she described the certain type of foreplay they were accustomed to, stating, "I believe it's a matter of conscience, but I am writing you to be sure." Her closing words were, "I am scared, I am hurt, and I am more worried at this time about my husband's feelings for the truth. I know you will tell me what to do." In another typical letter, an elder wrote, saying that he had a problem he wanted to get straightened out in his mind and heart, and that to do this he felt it best to contact the mother for advice, the mother being a name they gave to the organization back in the 80s. The problem dealt with his marital sex life, and he said that he and his wife were confused as to where to draw the line in the act of foreplay before the actual act of sex. He assured the society that he and his wife would follow any advice you give us, to the letter. These letters illustrate the implicit trust these persons had come to place in the governing body, the belief that the man forming that body could tell them where to draw the line in even such an intimate aspect of their personal lives, and that they should rightly hew to that line to the letter. Yeah guys, wow. You see the level of control that this organization has over its members? Just imagine hundreds of grown men writing to headquarters to ask the governing body which types of foreplay are acceptable to Jehovah. And the worst part is that the governing body felt entitled to rule on these things instead of, letting their followers make their own decisions in such an intimate area of life. And I just need to keep reading because this is just fascinating. Many letters went out from the society in response. Often they endeavored to provide some limited clarification, saying without exactly saying, as to what sexual foreplay fell within the bounds of condemned actions, other foreplay thereby being exempt. Letter after letter revealed that the persons involved felt positively responsible before God to report to the elders any deviance from the norm established by the governing body. A man in Midwestern state confessed to an infringement of the governing body's decision as regards his marital relations with his wife, was told by the elders that they were writing about this to the society. He also wrote an accompanying letter. 8 weeks passed, and finally he wrote again to Brooklyn, saying that the waiting, anxiety, and anticipation is almost more than I can bear. He said that he had been removed from all congregational assignments, including offering prayer at the meetings, and that almost weekly I am losing something that I have worked and prayed for 30 years. He pleaded for an early answer, saying, I do need some mental relief as to how I stand with Jehovah's organization. Just imagine working for decades for your congregational privileges just to have them revoked because you went down on your wife. Oh, but it gets worse. Some of those affected by the organization's rulings were persons whose normal sexual functions had been seriously impaired by an operation or an accident. Some of these expressed dismay at the position in which the governing body's decision placed them. One such person who had become impotent in this way had, during the years that followed, been able to perform a sexual role through one of the means now condemned by the organization. Before the governing body's ruling, he said he had been able to stop feeling like half a man because he could still please his wife. Now he wrote saying that he could not see the scriptural proof for the stand taken in the watchtower, but that his wife felt duty-bound to obey, and because he loved her, he acceded. He said he knew that he was the same as before, yet emotionally he was crumbling, since he feared that their marriage would be seriously affected. He pleaded to be told if there was not some loophole in God's will that would allow him the satisfaction of pleasing his wife. Holy shit, this is so sad. I mean, just imagine how many marriages were destroyed by this policy taken by some dudes in New York. Here's another example. Another issue that arose, somewhat linked to the above, involved a witness in South America whose husband had confessed to having had sexual relations with another woman. The problem was that he said that the relations were of the kind involved in the issue earlier described, in this particular case anal and not genital copulation. The decision of the governing body was that this did not qualify as adultery, that adultery required strictly genital copulation capable of producing children. Therefore, the man had not become one flesh with the other woman, and hence the decision was that the wife had no grounds for scriptural divorce and future remarriage. Now Raymond France confesses, the existing rule of voting required unanimity of decision, and I conformed. I felt genuinely disturbed, however, at thinking about this woman and her being told that she could not scripturally choose to become free from a man guilty of such act. The decision also meant that a husband who engaged in homosexual acts with another man, or who even had relations with a beast, was not subject to scriptural divorce, since a man could not, with any procreative possibilities, become one flesh with another man or with an animal. A Watchtower magazine earlier that year had in effect specially ruled this way. See, guys, the disaster that came from all these man-made rules. If a JW husband, had sex with another man or even an animal, or had backdoor action with another woman, that did not qualify for a divorce. So the spouse that was betrayed in these situations was just expected to forgive their spouse without the possibility of divorce. It's truly messed up. The book continues. I still remember sometime after the articles appeared, a letter that came in from a witness who some years before had discovered her husband having sexual relations with an animal. As she said, I couldn't live with a man like that, and she divorced him. Later, she remarried. The congregation then disfellowshipped her for so doing, as she was not scripturally free. After the Watchtower articles appeared, she now wrote and asked that in view of the changed position, something be done to clear her name of the reproach she had suffered as a result of the disfellowshipping action. I could only write her that the articles published were themselves a vindication of her course. So how more messed up could you possibly get? This woman divorced her husband because this lunatic was having sex with an animal, and then later on she remarried with another man. And since she had not been scripturally free to remarry, since Watchtower didn't consider bestiality to be porneia, she was disciplined and disfellowshipped. And when Watchtower changed the rules again to include any types of sex act outside of marriage as porneia, they refused to get her back in the congregation. They didn't offer her an apology or clear her name. They just said, well, oopsie daisy. And these are just a few examples that Raymond Franz states. I wanted to read all of them in detail just to show you the serious consequences that Watchtower doctrines have on their members. Because we might look at these crazy rules and prohibitions and laugh and, have a good time, oh, how stupid, why would anyone follow this? But when you get into the details and you see all the lives that were destroyed, you see that this actually is incredibly sad. And just imagine all the broken marriages and destroyed lives over these man-made rules that were overturned later on. So you might be wondering, okay, Panda, is anal and oral sex still banned? Well, we'll get to that, because since the 80s, Watchtower pretty much refused to comment on these issues. Like, they didn't release any more articles condemning anal or oral sex directly. So it was more of a keep your business private and the elders don't have to get in your business.
But wait! There's more!
But apparently, there were still some cases coming to headquarters and in several congregations since then, since now, in the year of our Lord, 2025, Watchtower finally decided to clear things up in this letter to the elders. This is the announcements and reminders for March 2025, which is supposed to be read by all the elders worldwide. It says, marital intimacies. The information in the article, Husbands, Honor Your Wife, in the January 2025 issue of the Watchtower, paragraph 17, adjusts what is stated in the March 15, 1983 issue of the Watchtower. Since generally speaking, a married couple would not discuss with others this intimate aspect of marriage, there would be no reason for the elders to be involved. However, if a couple requests assistance from the elders should base their comments on scriptural principles and the information in the January 2025 issue of the Watchtower. Request assistance from the elders for what? Like how to give good head? So yeah, the Watchtower made it clear just a few weeks ago that anal and oral sex were someone's private business. So the elders had no obligation or even right to get into the marital business of others. And I looked at the Watchtower article that they quoted here, and it says,
a husband who loves his wife values and cherishes her. He views her as a priceless gift from Jehovah. As a result, He treats her kindly and respectfully, even during the more intimate and private aspects of marriage. He will not pressure her to engage in sexual acts that make her feel uncomfortable, that are demeaning, or that bother her conscience. He, too, will strive to maintain a clean conscience before Jehovah.
The footnote says, the Bible does not provide details as to what sexual practices between a husband and a wife should be considered clean or unclean. A Christian couple must make decisions that reflect the resolve to honor Jehovah, to please each other, and to maintain a clean conscience. Generally speaking, a couple would not discuss with others this intimate aspect of their marriage. There we go. Finally, a reasonable take. It only took them 40 years to go back to that original 1978 decision that told elders to back off and stay away from the private life of married couples. 40 years. This is the nature of this religion, guys. A bunch of guys in upstate New York get together to formulate doctrine, then they change it on a whim, ruin thousands of lives in the process, then flip-flop on the changes, refuse to apologize for the damage they made, and claim that they are the representatives of God on earth. It's ridiculous. They've also flip-flopped on even more important topics such as military service, organ transplants, and disfellowshipping. All of it is man-made. There's nothing about this process that tells us it's directed by God.
Sexy.
So yeah, there you have it, guys. A complete history of the prohibition of anal and oral in this religion. Wow, what a fun video topic, right? I've been wanting to do this for a long time, honestly, but since the release of this new elder letter, I figured it was the perfect time to do so, because it's now official, guys. Jehovah's Witnesses can enjoy whatever they want with their spouse, and it's none of the elders' business. What a novel idea. If the topic of sex roles is fascinating to you, please check out the Pillowgate video if you haven't already. It's a complete disaster, and I think it's one of the funniest videos we have made because the subject matter is just ridiculous. And also check out the book Crisis of Conscience. It's one of my favorite books regarding the Watchtower because it gives you a very intimate look into the governing body. So yeah, those are my two recommendations for today. Go do some homework and don't forget to smash that subscribe button because it really helps me out. And if you appreciate my work, please head on over to Patreon or become a YouTube channel member. It's only $1 a month and you gain early access to all my videos. Once again, guys, thank you so much. Take it easy, have a wonderful day, and stay away from blowjobs.
There's fondling, caressing, stroking.
Bah. Goodbye, little sheep.